Let's get straight to the point. Number 8. The emotion you treat like radioactive waste. Tell me what emotion you run away from faster than a lactose-intolerant person running from a cheese wheel, and I'll tell you your entire childhood backstory. We all have that one feeling we absolutely refuse to process. For you, maybe it's sadness. You bottle that stuff up so tight you're basically a walking emotional pressure cooker waiting to explode because the barista put foam on your flat white. Psychologists call this experiential avoidance, and spoiler alert, it doesn't work. It actually amplifies the distress. If you religiously avoid sadness, you probably learned early on that crying made you look weak or got your needs ignored by the adults in the room. If anger terrifies you to the point of paralysis, you likely grew up watching adults throw tantrums like toddlers on steroids, and you swore you'd never be that messy. And if embarrassment is your absolute kryptonite, you were probably raised in an environment where making a simple mistake was treated like a federal crime. The cosmic irony is delicious. The emotion you spend the most energy dodging is actually the boss level of your personal growth video game. You gotta beat it to level up.
Number 7. Your natural habitat, or why your room is a crime scene. Look at your living space right now. Is it a minimalist temple of Zen, or does it look like a tornado hit a thrift store? If you're the person who can't sleep unless every sock is color-coded and facing north, congratulations! Your nervous system is likely on high alert. For the hyper-organized, a clean room isn't about being productive. It's an attempt to exert control over an internal world that feels like a chaotic group chat with 50 participants. On the flip side, if your desk is buried under 3-week-old receipts and half-finished coffee mugs, don't let your mom call you lazy. Scientific studies on environmental psychology suggest that a messy environment can actually foster creativity and unconventional thinking. Your brain is moving so fast that tidying up feels like a waste of precious processing power. You're not a slob, you're just mentally preoccupied. However, there is a fine line between creative clutter and I might have a family of raccoons living under my bed. If the mess starts to feel heavy, it's usually because your internal RAM is completely maxed out. Your room isn't just where you sleep, it's a physical printout of your current cognitive load. Clean it or don't. Just know your laundry pile is snitching on your stress levels.
Number 6. The I can't be alone with my thoughts phone reflex. How long can you sit in a waiting room without pulling out your phone to check notifications that don't even exist? If the answer is roughly 3 seconds, your brain is basically a dopamine addict in a trench coat. When silence feels like a physical threat, it's usually because your mind is carrying a massive backlog of unresolved junk. We use our screens as a digital sedative to numb the discomfort of simply being. Science calls this affective labeling, the process of identifying your feelings, but you're doing the opposite, affective ghosting. People who can sit in silence without doom scrolling aren't just more disciplined, their brains actually trust the quiet. They don't view a lack of noise as a void that needs to be filled with TikTok dances or depressing news cycles. If you find yourself reaching for your pocket the moment a conversation lulls, you're not bored, you're escaping. Your brain is terrified that if the room stays quiet for too long, the main quest of your life, the stuff you've been avoiding, will finally start playing. Silence isn't empty. It's a mirror. And for most of us, the reflection is wearing a filter we didn't ask for. Stop refreshing your feed. There's nothing there but distractions from the person you're too scared to meet, yourself. You're not bored, you're just running from a silent protagonist.
Number 5. Why you're a doormat with a golden heart. Ever find yourself doing a favor for someone you barely like, just so they won't think you're a jerk? If your love language is overextending myself until I'm a hollow shell of a human, let's talk. This isn't just being nice, it's fawning, a survival response where you try to appease others to stay safe. If you overgive in relationships, you likely learned that your value is strictly tied to your utility. You weren't loved for who you were, but for what you did. It's a classic Pavlovian setup: perform tasks, get the good dog head pat of validation. Scientists call this conditional positive regard, and it's a recipe for burnout. You're essentially trying to buy affection with favors currency, but the exchange rate is terrible. You end up attracted to people who take everything because they feel familiar to your childhood. On the flip side, if you push people away the moment they get too close, your brain has labeled intimacy as hazardous material. You view a compliment as a trap and a hug as a potential wrestling move. Your relationship style isn't a mystery, it's a survival blueprint. You aren't bad at love, you're just a professional at protecting yourself from things that haven't happened in 15 years. Stop being a 24/7 concierge for people who wouldn't help you move a couch.
Number 4. The 0 to 60 trigger tantrum. Did your partner just ask you to do the dishes, or did they just tell you that your entire existence is a cosmic failure? If a small comment sends you into a blind rage or makes you want to crawl into a hole and disappear, welcome to the world of emotional flashbacks. Your brain isn't reacting to the dishes, it's reacting to that time in 1998 when your parents ignored your science project. When you get triggered, your amygdala, that tiny almond-shaped drama queen in your brain, takes over the controls. It doesn't care about logic, it only cares about survival. It thinks you're being hunted by a saber-toothed tiger, even though it's just a passive-aggressive Slack message from your boss. These overreactions are actually psychological red flags pointing directly at your unhealed wounds. If being dismissed makes you flip out, it's because your younger self is still screaming to be heard. If being judged makes you freeze, you're essentially reliving an old criticism on a loop. Science shows that these triggers are neurological shortcuts to your past. You aren't crazy, you're just a time traveler who keeps accidentally visiting the worst parts of their own history. Stop blaming the person who poked the wound and start looking at why the wound is still wide open. It's not about the dishes, Steve. It's never about the dishes.
Number 3. Your fears are just skills in witness protection. Tell me what keeps you awake at 3 a.m. and I'll tell you what you're capable of. Most people view fear as a stop sign, but it's actually a GPS coordinate for your potential. If you're terrified of failure, it's because you have a high standard for mastery. You care so much about being competent that a mistake feels like a physical blow. Psychologists call this evaluative concerns, but let's call it what it is: your ambition wearing a mask of anxiety. If you fear vulnerability, you aren't cold. You're a veteran of emotional warfare who hasn't realized the war ended years ago. Every fear hides a skill in witness protection. Fear of confrontation? That's potential for diplomacy. Fear of being misunderstood? That's your inner communicator wanting to be authentic. We evolved these fears to avoid being tiger food, but now they just stop you from being interesting. Your brain is protecting a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. Stop treating anxiety like a prophecy. The thing that scares you most is exactly what you were meant to master.
Number 2. The late-night cringe and the harsh inner narrator. Why is it that at 2 a.m. your brain decides to play a high-definition highlight reel of every awkward thing you've said since the 3rd grade? If your inner monologue sounds like a mean-spirited sports commentator who hates your guts, we need to have a talk about self-referential processing. This isn't just overthinking, it's your brain's misguided attempt at a quality control audit. If you punish yourself for every tiny error, you're operating on a shame-based operating system you likely downloaded from a critical parent or a toxic teacher. Science shows that a harsh inner critic actually decreases motivation and increases the likelihood of depression. It's like trying to train a puppy by screaming at it every time it breathes. It doesn't learn, it just becomes a nervous wreck. On the flip side, people who treat themselves with self-compassion aren't being soft, they're being neurologically efficient. They recover faster and make fewer mistakes because they aren't wasting energy on self-flagellation. Your inner voice is essentially the architect of your reality. If you keep telling yourself you're a disaster, your brain will eventually stop looking for evidence to the contrary. Stop being a bully to the only person who's actually been with you through everything. You wouldn't let a stranger talk to you like that, so why are you doing it to yourself?
You're the narrator, not the villain.
Number 1. The tiny choices that are snitching on your future. You think your big life decisions, like choosing a career or getting married, are the milestones of your identity? Cute. The truth is, your personality is actually composed of the boring, microscopic choices you make when nobody is looking and there's no clout to be gained. It's how you react when the elevator door closes just as someone is running for it, or whether you put the shopping cart back or leave it to roam the parking lot like a metallic nomad. Psychologists call this trait manifestation in low-pressure situations. When you have absolutely nothing to do you immediately reach for a distraction, or can you exist without a digital pacifier? Your goals don't define you. The reason you want them does. If you're chasing a promotion just to prove your high school bully wrong, you're not ambitious, you're just carrying a decade-old grudge in a fancy suit. The person you are becoming is visible in the way you speak to yourself after a mistake and the boundaries you're too scared to set. You aren't a finished product, you're a series of data points. If you don't like the story your habits are telling, stop waiting for a big moment to change. The big moment is right now, while you're listening to this and wondering if you should finally start liking yourself. The mask is off, dude. Who's actually under there?
If this didn't trigger a total existential crisis, hit like and share. Subscribe to Coolest Dude Explains for your daily dose of reality. We post every day, so you'll never have to be alone with your thoughts for too long. See you tomorrow, you beautiful disaster.